Nietzsche once said, "Man would rather will nothingness than not will at all." We are not afraid of pain. We are afraid of the absence, of waking up and feeling nothing. They call it burnout. They call it stress, fatigue, apathy. But what if what you're feeling isn't burnout? What if it's the beginning of truth? What if the ache underneath all your routines isn't something to fix, but something to listen to? There's a woman in a cafe surrounded by laughter. She scrolls through pictures of sunsets, weddings, dreams. She smiles, but inside she feels like she's watching life through glass. There's a man on the train, deadlines, meetings, headphones on. But beneath the layers, he's quietly screaming. Not in pain, but in absence.
This is how it starts, not with a crash, but with a whisper.
Not with collapse, but with numbness. You go through the motions, you answer the messages, you pay the bills. But you're not really there. You're living in echoes, replicating a self you stopped believing in long ago. And the worst part? No one notices, not even you. At first, you tell yourself it's just a phase, a tired week, a dip. But days become months, and the emptiness becomes architecture. You build your life around it. You decorate it with plans and pictures. But it's still there, quietly humming beneath everything. Carl Jung once wrote, "A third of my patients suffered from no clinically definable neurosis, but from the senselessness and emptiness of their lives." This isn't weakness. It isn't failure. It's what happens when a soul wakes up and finds the world too shallow to drink from. This is the existential void, not a dramatic collapse, not a catastrophe. A slow drifting into a life that no longer feels like your own. And in a world obsessed with optimization and output, we're taught to fix this feeling with more effort. More goals, more noise, more pretending. But the void doesn't respond to noise, it waits. And if you're here, it's because some part of you has stopped pretending. Some part of you has grown tired of performing a life that doesn't feel like it's yours. The good news? This silence isn't emptiness, it's space, it's clearing. It's the beginning of something sacred, if you let it be. So don't run, don't scroll past it, don't numb it with your next task. Sit with it, ask it what it's trying to show you. Because beneath the surface of that ache is the most honest question you'll ever face. What if this is the moment you stop surviving and start living something real? You haven't failed, you've arrived, not at the end of meaning, but at the edge of discovering your own. In the deep silence of the Amazon rainforest, there lived a man who had no name. At least, not one we could translate, not one that survived. He was the last of his tribe. His people, his entire world, had been destroyed by greed, by violence, by the unspoken machinery that devours without memory. And so he disappeared, not into oblivion, but into presence. Into the green silence of the trees. For 26 years he lived alone. No contact, no language, no witness. He built small thatched shelters with his hands. He grew tiny gardens. And in every place he stayed, he dug a deep hole, mysterious, narrow, intentional. Some said they were traps, some said they were spiritual, some believed they were graves. Maybe they were all of those. Maybe they were how he prayed, how he processed, how he remembered. What matters is that he kept digging, even when there was no one left to understand why. No followers, no videos, just ritual, just breath, just presence. He didn't write books or seek pity. He didn't ask to be seen. And when he died alone in the forest, they found him in his hammock, still peaceful, draped in feathers as if performing a final rite before returning to the earth. No grand monument, no media coverage, just a man who met the void with ceremony. And somehow that's what makes him unforgettable. Because in a world addicted to recognition, he lived with quiet reverence. Where others would have collapsed, he created. Where others would have filled the silence, he listened. He didn't survive the void, he became fluent in it. And that is the part we must not miss. When everything you once knew is gone, your history, your language, your mirror, what remains? Only the choice to dig, to plant, to carry meaning even when there's no one left to explain it to. This wasn't survival, this was sacred defiance. A man who refused to let annihilation define him, a man who remembered what we have forgotten, that life doesn't require a stage to be holy, that meaning doesn't demand an audience to exist, that even in absolute aloneness there can be a kind of beauty that transcends explanation. So if you've been feeling like you've lost the thread, like no one understands what you're carrying, remember him, the man who had no one, and still woke up to tend his garden, still honored his dead, still dug into the earth with hands that remembered something deeper than despair. Not because he had answers, but because he had breath, and sometimes that is enough. You don't have to explain why you're still here. You just have to decide that being here is still worth honoring. Because the void may not give you a reason, but it may give you a space to build something sacred that no one else needs to see except you. There comes a moment when the distractions stop working. The music doesn't move you. The notifications don't mean anything. The calendar fills, but your chest stays empty. And it's in that moment, when the noise falters and the silence arrives, that something terrifying happens. You feel everything, or worse, nothing. That's when the void stops being a concept and becomes a room you can't leave. Most people panic. They flood the silence with urgency. More goals, more messages, more movement. But the void isn't something you escape, it's something you meet. And if you're brave enough to stay, to sit in the stillness without reaching for the next thing, you'll hear it. The sound of yourself breathing, raw, unperformed, unpackaged. And maybe for the first time, you'll realize you've been living outside of your own body. Most of your life has been a curated loop. Do more, be more, prove more. But now the void is asking you a different question. What if you didn't have to be anything? What if you could just be? There's a story of a Tokyo salaryman. Every day he wore the same grey suit. He commuted the same crowded train. He answered the same emails with the same mask. And one day, in the middle of a quarterly meeting, he stood up, walked out, and left everything, phone, identity, trajectory, on the table. He moved to the forest. Alone for 14 years? When a reporter finally found him and asked why he left, he didn't give a speech. He just said, because I couldn't hear myself breathe. That is the surrender. The moment you stop asking for noise to drown out the truth. And the truth is this: you are not your metrics. You are not your title. You are not your productivity. You are a living presence in a body that has been aching for silence. The philosopher Peter Wessel-Zapfer once wrote that human beings are over-equipped with consciousness, that we see too much, feel too much, know too much, and that most of our behavior is designed to keep us from confronting that unbearable truth. Distraction isn't just a habit, it's a defense, and maybe that's okay. Maybe all your scrolling, all your striving, all your busyness wasn't weakness, it was survival. But now you've survived long enough. And what's left is an invitation to finally feel. Not fix, not force, just feel. You are not falling apart, you're falling inward. Into the part of you that has been waiting behind the performance. The part that doesn't care how others see you. The part that only wants to be held in stillness. This isn't failure, it's freedom. The existential void isn't here to punish you. It's here to ask one thing. If nothing outside of you ever gave your life meaning again, could you still choose to make it matter? The philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre once said, "Man is condemned to be free." That's the paradox. You're not stuck, you're unshackled. There is no one coming to assign you a purpose. No one to rescue you from your own depth. Only you and the silence. And the breath you finally remembered how to feel. So sit with it, let it strip you. Let it dismantle the false scaffolding of should and must and maybe someday. Let it return you to a self that doesn't need applause to be real. You're not here to escape the void. You're here to walk through it and come out changed. Not saved, but seen. By the one person you've been avoiding all along, yourself. Before the world had systems, psychology, or self-help, there were stories. And one of the oldest was this. Inanna, the Queen of Heaven, felt something stir beneath her, an unexplainable pull downward. No one summoned her, no crisis drove her, just a knowing. So she descended into the underworld, into the realm of shadows, into the void beneath all titles and light. But the gates of the underworld were not open. And at each one she was forced to give something up. Her crown, her jewels, her robe, her stuff, her name. Gate by gate she was stripped of everything she thought made her who she was. Until she arrived at the bottom, naked, exposed, and alone. There her sister, Ereshkigal, the ruler of death, waited. And without ceremony she struck Inanna down. The Queen of Heaven was hung on a hook. Lifeless, 3 days. 3 nights, no movement. No audience, no answer, only silence, only the void. It's a story as old as breath. The moment where the descent becomes total. Where nothing remains of who you were. Where even hope goes quiet. We like to skip this part. We like resurrection stories. We like bounce backs. But in the underworld, there is no bounce, only stillness. And that's what makes it sacred. Because in that stillness, something happens. Not triumph, not rescue, but recognition. A pair of quiet spirits descend, not to save, but to witness. They don't speak loudly. They don't tear down the gates. They simply see it. And that is what begins the return. Not power, not noise, but presence. A few drops of life. A slow heartbeat, a breath, and Inanna rises. Not the same, not restored, but transformed. She reclaims her garments as she climbs back through the gates. But they're different now. Not masked, not ego memory. She returns with the weight of death in her bones, and the light of new life behind her eyes. This is what it means to be reborn. Not to forget the void, but to carry it with reverence. Because meaning doesn't replace the void, it grows beside it, inside it. You've been there, maybe you're there now. You've lost what made you feel whole. You've descended through gate after gate. And now maybe you're hanging, unsure if the story continues, but it does. Because it's in the darkness, in the silence, in the slow exhale of surrender, that something unshakable is born. You. The version of you that cannot be undone by loss. The version of you that doesn't rise for applause but for truth. The version of you that has met the void and didn't flinch. This is not mythology, this is memory. This is what it means to fall apart and not call it failure. To come undone and still choose to breathe. You are not behind, you are becoming. And the void, it was never empty. It was waiting for you. When the silence doesn't break but softens. When the pain doesn't vanish but begins to shape itself into something else. That's when the next part begins. Not the victory. Not the glory, the return. The strange, slow rising into a world that hasn't changed, but you have. You've been stripped, you've descended, you've tasted the nothing. And now the question is no longer, what do I chase? But what do I choose? No one tells you how quiet life becomes after the void. How surreal it feels to do normal things. Make tea, fold clothes, answer emails. When your soul has been hanging on a hook. And yet you do them. You keep breathing. You keep waking. You find yourself reaching for small things. Not because they fix you, but because they feel real. A candle lit. a handheld. A song that doesn't need to be profound, it just feels warm. This is where meaning begins again, not with a bang, with a seed. There's a field in Japan called Nagai Park. After the atomic bomb fell, it was flattened, soil poisoned, buildings gone. For years it was thought dead. But then came a weed, then a wildflower. Then a child barefoot and laughing. And now it's a garden. Not a monument to suffering, but a living, breathing act of defiance. Because life grows wherever it can, and so does meaning, even inside you, especially inside you. The void doesn't destroy meaning. It empties the ground so that real meaning has space to take root. But here's the truth, it's not handed to you. You make it, you build it. You decide, one uncertain act at a time, what matters now. And maybe that starts small, writing something no one will read. Calling someone who didn't expect to hear from you. Growing basil in a cracked pot by your window, not because you need it, but because you can. You're not performing anymore, you're planting. The philosopher Viktor Frankl, who survived the unspeakable, wrote, "People have enough to live by. But more often than not, they do not have anything to live for." You don't find that thing by thinking. You find it by living, by choosing, even in the ashes, especially in the ashes. Like the man who dug holes in silence. Like the goddess who rose wearing her scars like memory. Like you, right now, doing things no one sees, just to remember what presence feels like. This is not a return to normal. It's the beginning of an honest life. Not one dictated by purpose, but discovered in attention. In kindness, in ritual, in breath. The void will still whisper. But now you have something to whisper back. I'm still here. And this time I'm not building for applause. I'm building for truth. I'm growing something real in the soil of what almost destroyed me. Not in spite of the emptiness, because of it. There's a kind of dawn that doesn't break the sky. It breaks you, not with brilliance, but with recognition. That somehow, without knowing how, you've made it through. You've sat with the silence. You've looked into the nothing. And now you are carrying something you didn't have before. Not clarity, but gravity. Not answers, but presence. You are not who you were before this began. You're slower now, softer, you feel things more, you explain yourself less. You look at your own hands and see not utility, but proof. You kept going. There is no fanfare. But there is a shift. You begin to notice the way light lands on the floor in the morning. The way someone speaks your name without needing anything. The way your chest rises and falls, automatically, miraculously, even after everything. And then you realize you've stopped asking for meaning to arrive. Because you've started living like someone who creates it. You're not running from the void anymore, you're walking with it. You've made space inside yourself that used to be filled with noise. Now it holds fire, small, quiet but real. The same fire the man of the hole carried when no one remembered his name. The same fire Inanna lit when she returned changed. The same fire that lights a candle in the center of your chest when everything outside goes dim. And here's what no one tells you. You are not here to be understood. You are here to become. Not perfect, not finished. Not fixed, whole, including the broken, including the silence, including the shadow. You are not waiting for the dawn anymore. You are the dawn. And what comes next isn't certainty, it's creativity. The moment where you get to choose what your life means, not because it's convenient or impressive, but because it feels true. That is the light. Not external, internal, self-made, void-forged, soul-lit. So if this voice found you, if the silence inside you was loud and lonely, know this, you are not alone. You never were. There are others walking quietly beside you. Other fires glowing in the dark. Other lives being rebuilt with gentle hands and scarred hope. So don't leave in silence. Say something, one line, one truth, one breath that says, I made it through too. And maybe someone else will see that light and realize the void wasn't the end of them either. It was the place where something sacred began and kept going and became human again.